This is Travis Wayne Goodsell. I just did a blog post on my website about how Democrats are sneaky racists. We all know about Republicans being racist, but Democrats? No, they don't. They say all these things. They want to make all these things possible for minorities and women of minorities. That's the sneaky part. So my website talks all about that, and I did it on my website rather than here because you guys only care about Mormon stuff. But I really want to dump Mormons, you know. But when I do that, nobody comes to my channel. So that's the only reason why I drag on and on about Mormons and how corrupt and evil they are, having been one myself, knowing exactly how they are corrupt and evil. You know, I'm not just some guy who just did nothing in church, did nothing with study, did nothing with trying to research the church and their claims. No, I was a forerunner in the church. I was one of those intellectuals. And so, yeah, the church taught me and raised me to be an intellectual. And then when I became an intellectual, the church then backed off and said, no, we don't want our Mormons to be scriptorians, scholars, and intellectuals. So it sort of backfired on the church, and you know, I was only being obedient. So anyway, so yeah, I'm thinking about maybe altering it to do a not LDS Mormon video channel. I'd have to have all the other old videos, but I don't know how that would go. You know, it would still show up for Mormons, but it won't be for Mormons. Mormons will be like, hey, this is contrary to our belief system. Oh, right, not Mormon. Huh. So, I don't know. Would it catch Mormons' attention with the reverse psychology? So, anyway. And Beto O'Rourke and the Yahoot. Democrats, I am not a Democrat. Republicans, I am not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm a Constitutionalist. Not the Constitution Party from way back yonder. I'm a Constitutionalist, one who follows the Constitution. And the Constitution itself says that we are supposed to have a constitutional Republican form of government. You say, well, no, it only says Republican form of government. It doesn't say constitutional. You're looking at the wrong article. And got to take the whole Constitution as one. You can't separate and pull out what you want, what you don't want. So, you know. So yeah, Democrats, don't fall for Beto. You know, I admired him for going down to the border when the first news broke of the concentration camps and the torture and the caging, of separating of families down at the border. So good job for him for that token event. But then we see why he was doing it. He was running for office. And where was he after that? He did his token thing and then, whoop, gone. I'm running for candidacy, so I need to go and talk to the people. No, he would have impressed me if I were in his district. If he stayed away from me, not trying to smooge me into giving him money to run for office, but instead was at the border fighting for every last immigrant's freedoms, rights. That would have impressed me. And so now he's running for president. He's not doing any fighting for anybody. I've heard parts of his speech yesterday. He's not saying what his plan is. He's saying what people want to hear him say. You know, higher wages, no racism, remove Trump. You know, it's all the same thing from both sides of the political spectrum. They never give a proposal. This is my proposal. When I get into office, this is what I will have implemented. Then people can look at that and go, hey, whoa, that's awesome. No, nobody does that, do they? They sort of threaten you with extortion. You better let me in, otherwise there is no potential possibility that I will do this for you as I'm claiming I'm going to do. And of course, for the majority of American history, very few times a politician ever follows through on his political campaign promises, do they? So, yeah, Beto's a fraud. It's that simple. He just wants the power. And, you know, as a Democrat, he's a racist. You have to read my article in order to understand why. So, all right. Well, so about the church, because nobody's going to care about my politics. As you've seen, both Republicans and Democrats are wrong. And it's only a dichotomy choice, Republican or Democrat. We don't have a win-win choice out of any of this. You know, there's not supposed to be a choice. We're supposed to have a constitution, which is equality and rights for all. Period. We don't need to change the laws or add amendments for a select group of people and discriminate against everybody else. So, what about the church? The church is a little different, but not too much different. There's thousands of religions, but the church pulls the stunt of, if you're not for us, you're against us. If you're not the church of God, as we claim we are, you're the church of the devil. Now, that may be true. That may be true, because when you're talking about a God, all these thousands of churches have their own God. If there is no God for any of these churches, and that they just made it up, then they're a fraud. And so you got to be able to identify if among those thousands of religions, who is not an actual fraud. So you got to actually find out who the true God is, and then find out who is the true church of that true God. That becomes difficult because there's only ancient records about meeting gods, except certain Christian religions, and others have interpreted the ancient records as saying, well, it's not really the physical God that they saw, despite the wording in the translation. Yeah, Mormons make the claim that Joseph Smith saw in the flesh Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ, even though it's called the first vision, not the first manifestation. Big difference. And you would know it if you read the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon says visions are pretty much the same as dreams. So Lehi has a vision, or in other words, a dream, as it says in the Book of Mormon. And yet Mormons miss that, and they've turned it into a physical reality, mostly because of the lectures on faith that Joseph Smith did. He set it up, as well as taken from the Book of Mormon in Alma chapter 32, starting in verse 28, where you have to actually reproduce revelation in the flesh. So if you get an idea, an inspiration, you've got to make it. You got to make it. So an artist, he's got to make the art. An architect, he has to make the blueprints. A contractor, he has to make the building according to the blueprints. The blueprints become his revelation. And so on and so forth. And then religion tries to say, oh no, our revelation is different from the world's revelation. No, that's a fraud. So if any kind of church is trying to say, hey, just trust us, just have faith, don't study, don't research, don't become intelligent, you know there's something wrong there. So that's another thing to look for. And so yes, the Mormon church is a fraud now too under Brigham Young, because Brigham Young took the church in a completely different direction altogether when he made a new God. Adam, Heavenly Father now. According to Brigham Young, it's him, not me. I'm not imposing on Brigham Young what God he had. No, he gave the talk in conference, and it caused a stir. Orson Hyde, for example, opposed Brigham Young directly in conference, as well as in his office. And thus Brigham Young demoted him in rank in the apostleship so that he would not become the successor, and John Taylor became the successor instead. All because of the Adam God declaration. And so it doesn't matter if the successive presidents say, Brigham Young was wrong, we're going back to the God of Joseph Smith. Doesn't matter, it's too late. Brigham Young created his own church. So then if the successors do it, they're creating their own church. They're not saying it's a restoration, are they? They're saying, oh, it's the same church that Joseph Smith had. We're a branch off. That's what they're doing. And so, it's a dichotomy that the church imposes. We are the only true church, therefore everyone else is wrong, and you must comply with us. And I've told you that there's problems here. Lots of problems here. Volumes of problems here. And and I've gone over that in my videos. But so similar to identifying that both political parties are wrong and that we need another option where rights for life, liberty, and property are equal among all. Same with the church. You first have to establish the reality of a God. If there is no reality of a God, then you have to downgrade it to a moral position, an ethical position. And in those situations, you have to then know the difference between sound versus unsound reasoning. And Mormons aren't being taught, Americans aren't being taught what sound reasoning is, because comment after comment from Mormons spewing their hatred reveals their ignorance of sound reasoning. But they sure know about fallacies and how to use them. So that's the sad part, is that people think that I'm stupid and other critics are stupid as they spew their hatred and lies and deceptions and deceit to try to silence us. And so that's what needs to be done then, is that if you don't have somebody who actually sees God in the flesh, though Joseph Smith gave another alternative. He said, hey, I had a dream. I saw God in a dream. Now, does that count? Sort of. That's a start. Okay, you want to claim that? Fine. I've seen Jesus in my dreams. I've had several dreams, and I did a video on it. Not too many caught on to it and have been watching it. But does that mean I'm the prophet, the chosen one? There's more that's needed. You have to look for morality. And Christians say that, well, the church has to comply with Jesus's gospel, what Jesus did. Because Christians, they don't believe in prophets anymore. Jesus died. The apostles died. And so only bishops remained. And so the church continues with leaders of congregations. And they had to come up with some alternative to not having apostles anymore. And so what they did was, scriptures. That's the words of the apostles. That's what we need to go by. No more revelation. That's Christian viewpoint. And Mormons know, no, God inspires men and they are prophets. Okay, so let's look at what they say then. What is their morality position? Their platform. And that's where you find out, okay, was it Jim Jones, is that his name? The Kool-Aid man who killed the senators, or was it just a House representative? Maybe it was both. Horrible tragedy of the abusive man. When he realized he was getting exposed, he made sure to kill everybody. So, ugly. And then there's the other incident involved an FBI standoff with the compound, and they ended up having a shootout. So that didn't go well. And then there's the polygamous groups that families get separated. And then they realize, well, okay, we can't really separate the kids from their mothers, even though the criminal involvement's going on. And so, there's been a lot of problems trying to keep religion under control and not out of control. And then, of course, there's the Catholic Church with the Pennsylvania parishes, congregations, the sex trafficking going on there. And then I've heard other accounts of nuns also involved in sex trafficking. And so, if you're not familiar, Mormons too, with the LDS bishop who involved in sex trafficking, and the primary teacher who had sleepovers and used that to sexually assault the kids. It's just ugly. But by their fruits ye shall know them. And the church is encouraging it with their local leaders. So when the church came out on the sex trafficking bishop, the PR guy only said it's inappropriate for members and local leaders. You sort of missed the prophets. You gotta cover everybody in that. You can't just limit it as to who's to blame and who it's unacceptable for. So, yeah, the prophets are not above the law. And unfortunately, no quorum of the 12 will go against a president of the church. Section 107 says they are supposed to. That when a president of the church gets out of line, the whole quorum of the 12 are supposed to have a council. I can't remember what kind of council it's called. There's a bishop's council for women, which is not supposed to be the case because women have priesthood, and if they had priesthood, it would be through the stake president's council, high council court. So I guess it's a high council court with the capital letters HC rather than the lowercase letters for a stake council. But yeah, I mean that's what people need to do. Jennifer's asked me what I believe in, and so I hope this also explains for her, as I did with my reply, that first you have to find out the reality of God. And if you can't find out the reality of God, then you've got to figure out what is moral versus what is immoral. And it has nothing to do with sexuality necessarily, or in whole. Sexual morality is a part of the whole of morality. Ethics is the non-religious terminology for morality. And then you have to figure out, well, how do I determine what is moral versus immoral? Because there are many different cultures, and they all practice different ways of what they consider moral behavior. Whereas, we in our culture think that we've established a morality that we want to impose upon everybody else in the world. And so are we right, or are we overstepping our bounds because we're not really as moral as we think we are? So like the church, for example. The church has a celestial standard of morality, but the church also has a strict theology that morality is not to be imposed by force or coercion upon anybody else, even upon the members. The members, they get to choose. Yes, I want to become a part of your church. I want to live according to your morality. But the church isn't supposed to impose it. And yet that's what they're doing. They're going to California, Colorado, here in Utah, forcing people into their morality. And some cases it may be good morality, but in others it's not. Such as the medical marijuana. It's medical. It's supposed to help people who have seizures and other illnesses that can't be taken care of by any other known medicines. And so the church wants to interfere with that. So, again, Jesus was a healer. Why then won't the church support healing? So, it's one of those simple tests that you can perform yourself. If you choose Jesus and his example in the New Testament as your method of choosing morality. But again, you have to check Jesus too, because it wasn't Jesus who wrote the Gospels. It was other people claiming to be the people who were observing Jesus. If you don't understand that, I'm not going to spend the time on this video to do that explanation. And so, yeah, when Paul says that women should remain silent in church, be careful of the priest or the pastor or leader of a congregation who embraces Paul's writings, because that's what he embraces, is women keeping silent in the church. And if he doesn't, then he's a hypocrite, because he claims to be for Paul, but then is picking and choosing what he likes and what he doesn't like from Paul. So it's the same thing with the Mormon Church. You know, ordained women want to pick and choose from the Mormon Church what they like and what they don't like and what they think the church needs to change. No, women, listen to me. The church is wrong. You don't need to be a member of it. So, you know, organize your own church with your morality views. That's an option for you. You don't have to conform to the church trying to get them to make you non-conformant. And so, what's Trump doing now? I won't reconsider national emergency declaration. Won't reconsider? Won't reconsider? Does that mean he's going to veto it? Because the Senate is going to... Senate is now going to oppose his national emergency, since Mike Lee stepped forward to cover up for Mitt Romney. So yeah, I caught that. See, Mitt Romney, or Mike Lee, I have not made a connection directly to Russia, per se. I think he was one of those guys who went to Russia on the 4th of July when Jonathan Huntsman Jr. arranged the meeting with the Russians to have a little tea party and do whatever else they were doing in secret over there. I think he was involved in that. But other than that, I don't see the connection like I do with Romney. And so I think that's what Mike is doing. He's putting a cover on Mitt Romney so that Mitt Romney can then vote for Trump's national emergency. So pay attention to that, because I am. And I already did the video earlier this morning or last night about that situation. And I've already done the older video also. But, alright, so yeah, those who are critics of the church, those blacks, for example, you've got Genesis group, you've been segregated. It's that simple. The church segregated you and created a Genesis group. Now, outside of Utah, there's not enough members in an area to segregate. There's some segregation for Spanish, for example, and deaf. If you get a large population of Korean, for example, New York, for example, has group pockets in neighborhoods, so wards then are able to conform to those segregated communities already. So yeah, if I haven't told you, when I was forced on drugs, the drugs took away my allergies, so this right here doesn't get blocked off. But since I've gone off, it's come back, and it's getting worse now that I'm trying to get back into an exercise routine, but unsuccessful to do it on a regular basis because of the snow. 3 years without snow, and now it decides to give a normal winter. But I had a cyclone bomb yesterday. But I hope Mormons understand that the church doesn't care about women, the church doesn't care about minorities, the church doesn't care about blacks. They just claim they do. The fruit shows otherwise. And don't keep trying to change the church. If the church isn't doing it right, it's not God's church. It's that simple. It's not complicated. It's just God's church would be the right way because God is inspiring the leader or leaders. It's that simple. So the Catholic Church, every Catholic should know the Catholic Church is wrong. Not just for the priests, with the sex trafficking in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia, but all throughout their history, the Spanish Inquisition, the Crusades, you know, all of that. That's just unacceptable. Nobody should allow that. And so, thus the Protestant Revolution and Lutheranism and all the different Christian groups that branched off because they wanted nothing more to do with the Catholic Church. And so they picked and chose from the Gospel and from the New Testament what they wanted and formed their own religion based on what they picked and chose out of the New Testament. So, again, you can't pick and choose. You have to form your own religion. You have to then create your own scripture, because that's what they did after Jesus and the apostles were dead. Each bishop of a congregation picked a gospel that he agreed with, and then wrote a creed based upon that gospel. And that's how the different churches emerged after Jesus and the apostles died. And that's according to Eusebius, for all of you who are now upset with me for not giving you a reference on just this video conversation. This is not an official media presentation, guys. I'm not a professional. Just a regular person of low stature who has no prominence or position of power. Just a regular guy who wanted to learn the truth. And I'm sharing that with you, just like Plato's allegory of the cave. And you guys are acting exactly like those who remain chained did to the guy who was unchained and went back to tell the others, hey, there's a whole new world. A whole new world. Which Disney one was that from? Was it Pocahontas? Or was that something else? Anyway. So, yeah, that's what has to be done if you're going to search for a true church, as you want to call it. You can use the definition of true, meaning sound, and that would be more logical. Unfortunately, to create a religion requires a lot of money, and so that's a frustrating part. It's several $1,000s, I've realized, as I tried to figure it out when I tried to do a non-profit organization as part of my business. And then that they said, oh well, yeah, you can do a religion also as a non-profit, and so that's when I found out, oh, the Mormon Church is a non-profit rather than a charitable religion. Yeah, so church continues to deceive and fraud the church and its members and the world. So it's real simple to identify if you just look. You know, the church tells you to have standards, but when they don't want you to apply those standards to them. Because if you were to do so, yeah, you would be shocked and horrified, as I have been. So, alright, that's this little thing I wanted to share with you today. So I'll try to remember to post the link about Democrat racism, and I'll see what I'm going to do. I've got a big pile on my shelf here, and I don't want to transfer them over to the pile over here on the table, but it's most likely going to happen if I especially decide to just go with the Not Mormon video series. So, alrighty.